Barbados often looks too good to be true. Lured by crystal clear waters, many come for the ultimate Caribbean getaway.
Pleasant good morning. We're heading over to the Turtles of Carlisle Bay and then over by the shipwrecks. People come to Barbados for three things: the rum, our sunshine, and our oceans.
It's just beautiful. Everything that I'm seeing, I'm able to look down and see a turtle. It's not something that you see in Georgia.
It's idyllic on the water today. But centuries ago, under British rule, this bay was at the centre of a cruel slave trade.
They kidnapped them and branded them with hot irons.
A bloody business model was born here. Landowners built lucrative sugar empires run on African slave labour.
400 years of free labour. You build all those empires for free.
Now, as the world's newest republic, it's demanding old colonial masters right the wrongs of the past.
Britain, you listening? Pay. You owe us, and big time. Apology and reparations.
Our folks are seeking to emancipate themselves, even if it means breaking with tradition, breaking with the establishment.
This small Caribbean island has started a global fight. It's prepared to take on the powerful institutions and individuals who made a fortune here for reparations. But generations after slavery was abolished, can it convince them that it's owed a reckoning and repayment?
Once you're in Barbados, you're on island time. It's no wonder tourism is the main moneymaker here. The economy is now dependent on visitors, and almost half come from Britain. It makes talk of reparations a tricky business. Anthony Carter is the Calypso King of Barbados, known here as Mighty Gabby. At 75, he's a national icon.
Thank you so much.
This is where I grew up as a boy, all of this beach.
So this is a special place for you?
Very much so. My boyhood was spent fishing, swimming, playing cricket.
He isn't afraid of talking about slavery and challenging Britain.
We don't have hatred, we just want wrong things to be righted. But at the same time, we are very welcoming people.
Gabby grew up on the island when it was still a British colony. For 3 centuries, the country had lived under the Crown, which once endorsed slavery. It wasn't until 1966, when he was a teenager, that Barbados became an independent nation, but kept the Queen as its head of state.
And how do you feel about the British royal family now?
I'll tell you something. I've been one of the fortunate or unfortunate people to have actually met them personally, how you and I are talking. Met Elizabeth, her husband. I always felt that Elizabeth had quite a long time to apologize to us for slavery and to pay reparations, and she didn't.
Last year, in the days after the Queen died, Gabby sparked international uproar.
I wrote a poem called Goodbye to Rubbish. Is anything wrong with speaking the truth? It's the truth. Elizabeth was not a great leader. Charles is behaving differently. It seems, because the first thing he did, he said that slavery was a terrible thing. He admitted that, but he didn't say, we are going to pay reparations, so I'm looking forward to the day when that occurs.
The younger generation is prepared to carry on the fight.
Good evening.
And I have the extreme pleasure of introducing one of my brothers in poetry.
It's a regular open mic poetry night at a bar just back from the tourist beaches. In here, it's mostly locals.
Put your hands together for Akeem, stoned with Cupid, Chandler Preskin.
That's right. Hi, Carl.
I hear all this talk about reparations. Okay. But what we really looking to repair? Maybe it's the broken family ties caused by generational genocide, no generalize in the media. It could be the
Akeem Chandler Prescott is more comfortable than most riffing on reparations. He's a leading voice in the national conversation, urging young people to get involved.
The black man till he's pale.
Usually when we hear reparations, we think of money. It is so much more than money, and it's about enfranchisement economically, it's about building out the healthcare system, it's about education, it's for indigenous people as well.
So again, I ask you, what does it mean to emancipate yourself fully? Because 1833, we free the body, but what about the mind and the shackles that bind us in the servitude?
Akeem sees a future where European investment frees Barbados from a reliance on white patronage.
So we emancipate ourselves from the plantation system, only to live in the prison of tourism.
I think as a country, we have to diversify our financial portfolio. It can't just be tourism per se.
Poetry in Barbados and spoken word poetry specifically is rooted in the African oral tradition.
So give me black joy instead. I said give me black joy instead. Give me black accomplishment.
Cindy Celeste is one of the organisers of this event and a regular performer too.
What are we feeling in this moment? Is it pride? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it rage?
In the capital, Bridgetown, Cindy once used her poetry to speak on behalf of her nation. In 2020, Black Lives Matter swept the Caribbean. Protesters turned their anger on a statue that once stood in this square. British naval hero Horatio Nelson. As Nelson fell, Cindy rose to sum up what the country felt in that moment.
How can he occupy a space right at the center of our seat of power without inciting public rage? We should be ashamed that we let this continue for so long.
The younger generation, which would be like my generation and forward, is very in tune with the discussion of charting our own Barbadian identity and having historically been stripped of that identity. What are we pouring into it and investing in it now?
12 months later, Cindy was back in the square for an even bigger occasion, the day Barbados became a republic and said goodbye to the crown.
Today, we finally raised the flag of a nation no longer clinging to colonial coattails for its identity.
Ooh, those words are coming back to you, aren't they? You can remember the moment?
Wow. I would love to believe that people felt the air change the same way I did.
King Charles, the then Prince of Wales, is sitting in the audience. I mean, what's running through your head?
If we are proclaiming that we are a republic, we can't just write it down and be quiet about it, you know? And so it's gonna make some people uncomfortable.
From the darkest days of our past and the appalling atrocity of slavery, which forever stains our history, the people of this island forged their path with extraordinary fortitude.
King Charles came very close to saying an apology at that transition ceremony, but he didn't quite say it.
And I think that that's kind of the nature of the apologies that we've gotten.
Building a future is difficult when this country still feels burdened by its past. Most of its 280,000 citizens are descendants of enslaved Africans. When slavery ended in 1834, it was slave owners who were compensated. Barbados's museum holds the secrets of this dark history. The records here give a glimpse into the lives of the people who suffered under slavery. Kevin Farmer is the museum's deputy director and an expert on its collection from that time.
Right. So here's the Newton Journal. The importance of this is, for us, immense.
This was an inventory log for one of the island's largest plantations. The stock it counts: enslaved humans.
Uba, who's in the field gang at age 20. Celia, who's in the second gang at age 17.
So a 17-year-old woman out cutting cane by hand.
Cutting cane by hand, yes. Cutting cane, who's planting cane, who's weeding, doing the same work, manual labor that the men are doing at the age of 17. And she is going to be in that job till she dies. Here we have someone called Phil Francis, who's passed at 4 months.
It's just a baby.
Just a baby.
It's quite chilling the way there's just a giant black line through their name.
For us today, looking back, it just seems so inhumane.
From birth till death.
From birth to death.
This was their life.
That was their life.
Within the library is a book of even greater significance. This is a manual on how to run a slave plantation. The blueprint was replicated across the Americas.
Instructions for the management of a plantation in Barbados and for the treatment of Negroes. This book is written by the influential planters of the day.
What does it tell us about how enslaved people were treated on plantations?
It does it in a rather benign fashion. I know from observation and experience that a certain degree of discipline is necessary in the government of Negroes. At best, the language of the book seeks to be benevolent. The operational of that benevolence is far from. It was oppressive, it was sadistic, it was torture. The reality is that most enslaved people, if they lived 15 or 20 years on a plantation and survived, they were lucky. Very early on, persons lasted no more than a decade.
Working slaves to an early grave was the intention of planters. It was a financial calculation. They were cheaper to replace than keep alive.
And these planters, what did they go on to do?
Edward Drax, whose family still owns a plantation in Barbados, his descendants are sitting MPs in the British House of Parliament at this time.
Today, the Draxes are the only family on the island to have continuously operated a plantation since the start of slavery. British MP Richard Drax is the current owner. He's often described as one of the wealthiest members of the House of Commons.
James Drax brought sugar to Barbados. He was one of the first planters that experimented with it. That the family's profits allowed them to, still up to today, 400 years later, have a plantation on this island. And the monies that they would have made had to be massive.
I'm meeting someone who knows more about the Drax plantation than just about anyone.
Hi, Trevor. Nice to meet you.
Right on. Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for taking us out to Drax Hall today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Let's start the journey out there.
Trevor Marshall is a local historian who for decades has wanted to unlock Drax Hall's secrets.
They have not allowed anybody, any historian, white or black, to have access to their records. Here we are at the great, the enigmatic, and to some extent the mysterious Drax Hall. This is the place where the business model of using slaves on tropical farms, which we call plantations, this is where it was created.
Richard Drax lives in England and won't give us an interview, so it looks like this is as close as we'll get. Until something very unexpected happens.
Can this guy get through here? Quickly. Come.
The manager gives us rare access to film inside the plantation yard.
Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll. Drum roll. You are looking at the oldest plantation great house in the Western Hemisphere. It functioned both as a fortress and a dwelling place. You call this the plantation yard. This is where the action took place. This is where canes were brought to be ground. This is where people were paid money in the post-slavery period. This is where people were flogged, disciplined.
This mansion was built around the 1650s. It's still at the heart of a working plantation today.
For me, as the descendant of slaves, this always brings home to me what slavery was like. It's my ancestors who built this, who constructed this, who provided the labor.
It's a strange feeling to be here in the fields of Drax Hall, the place where for almost 2 centuries slaves worked. And when you're here, you get a sense for just how tough this existence must have been. It is hot, it is oppressively humid. When the sun hits your skin, it just burns. And this is where, for generations, slaves spent much of their life cutting this cane by hand.
The wealth generated at Drax Hall hasn't flowed to many who live in its shadows. 4 generations of Chris Cox's family worked on the plantation as paid labourers after slavery ended.
When I went to work at the plantation, I was a young boy, fresh out of school. That was a hard job. Cane cutting, that was a very, very, very hard job. And you can still see things from the slave days, like they had like shackles. They had certain things that the slaves used to operate with that was still present in the plantation. Yeah.
And how did that make you feel, seeing that stuff?
Man, it was kind of tough, man. Enjoyed as a boy.
Chris grew up here, in a village originally created to house Drax's slaves, and then later, the workers the plantation employed.
This is a cherry tree.
In the 1980s, the Barbadian government forced plantation owners across the island to sell land to their tenants at below market value. Some say it was a form of reparations.
When I was younger, I would fly up in the tree but not know. At my age, I just get stick.
Chris's father bought this plot from the Draxes. The family planted a kitchen garden to keep food on the table, like this breadfruit tree.
Yeah. This is gonna make a lovely meal.
Did you grow up eating this a lot?
Yes. This is one of the strong foods in Barbados. Some people even make it in chips.
marks. Get set, go.
Some living on the edge of the plantation still grow food out of necessity. Chris's niece, Rondell, lives next door in a house also on the family plot.
Bills, groceries, everything is tough. Everything. You know, you have to create a kitchen garden or a garden, and cost of living is so high, you gotta plant your food.
She's looking for work while raising a son who's almost 3.
People in this neighborhood are trying to survive. I tell you, my family and other families in Drax, we help make Mr. Drax what he used to do. And through the fact that he's so wealthy.
Do you think the Drax family owes people in this community an apology?
I think the people in this community can be more than sorry. But they were loving people in this community, yes. That, for beginners, yes, that will help.
Historian Trevor Marshall also believes the Drax family owe the island more than an apology.
Drax owes not just slaves, but Barbados reparations.
He wants them to pay up, while also opening the plantation to the public.
The average Barbadian should be able to come in here and see the famous Drax Hall. The average Barbadian cannot come in here.
There's been demands for reparations since slavery ended in 1834, but today it's the official policy of the Barbados government. They've combined with 14 other Caribbean nations to make their case. David Comachong is the Deputy Chair of the National Reparations Task Force.
Mr. Comachong, so nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Thanks
Welcome to Barbados.
Thank you.
This is a conversation whose time has come. Reparations is about saying, look, you committed a crime during those centuries, you profited from that crime, we were disadvantaged and impoverished and starved of resources because of that crime. Now is the time that you have to help repair some of the damage.
Some people, when they think about reparations, might think it is simply a financial payment.
Reparations is about, first of all, an acknowledgement, an apology, a proper apology, and then a sitting with the victims or the representatives of the victims and working out a package of compensation.
The task force recently worked up a plan to seek compensation from the Drax family.
Why should Richard Drax pay for things that his ancestors did centuries ago?
This was the slavery family in Barbados. The role of that family goes right through the history of Barbados. There are several British families now that have held up their hands and said, yes, we concede and we say we must make reparation. Why doesn't that logic and moral conscience apply to the Drax family?
It's not just individuals who are being held to account. On Barbados's rugged Atlantic coast, a powerful institution is trying to make amends for its slave past. Codrington College is one of the Caribbean's most distinguished Anglican seminaries. It's finding a new voice.
We together again, praising the Lord. We together again, in one accord. Something good is in my soul. We would have been brought miles across the Atlantic into something that we did not want for ourselves.
The college's principal, Michael Clark, is hosting this workshop about blending Christianity with African spiritualities.
We ask this through the power of the infinite Son, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen and amen.
It is a small step for us, especially here within the Caribbean. The church is perceived as part of that colonial machinery.
But the church doesn't just represent the religion of slave owners, it was one of them. These grounds were once a sugar plantation run by an Anglican missionary organisation. It was bequeathed the property from the Codrington family in 1710. It kept slaves here for over 100 years. This small exhibit at Codrington College brings together some of the old archives and records from this place. There are photographs of wooden houses that slaves would have lived in, and it even talks about just how many slaves were here. It says Christopher Codrington's will provided that 300 slaves be regularly maintained on his estates.
Right now we're looking right across the Atlantic Ocean. Our nearest neighbour would be the African continent. And from the days of enslavement, the Codringtons, it appeared, they had their own slave ships. So they would have brought them in at their bay here, which is Concept Bay.
The Anglican Church first apologised for its role in Caribbean slavery in 2006. Can you tell me what it felt like when you had to be the one to give an apology here?
How do you, as the descendant of a slave, apologize to other descendants of slaves for enslaving them? And you're supposed to be doing it on behalf of the institution.
Last year, the church apologised again and promised a $190 million fund to invest in communities affected by slavery. Did you feel like an apology changed anything for the people here?
It's good to have the apology, but it's almost like it's, as we say in Barbados, sometimes too little, too late. I think we have come to a place where we no longer wait for emancipation. Our folks are seeking to emancipate themselves, even if it means breaking with tradition, breaking with the establishment.
Everybody has to face that moral question. The Anglican Church has posed it very clearly. It was a sin, and we acknowledge it, we apologize for it, and we must do something to help repair the damage. And that moral question is being posed to the British government.
The British government have shown that they're quite unwilling to negotiate on this issue. What makes you think that will ever change?
You have important British companies and institutions like the Bank of England saying yes. We were involved and we apologize. Lloyd's of London. The pressure is building on the British government.
David says the royal family needs to be held to account too. King Charles is supporting research examining the monarchy's links to slavery.
I think Charles is trying to send a message to his government that the time has come for you to get on board. I expect that the royal family will, sooner rather than later, make apology and pay reparations.
There's one more place I need to visit before leaving the island. This was the Newton plantation. A few decades ago, a mass slave burial site was discovered in this field. I'm thinking about what I'd read in that ledger. The babies who died here, the 17-year-old girl who will work in these fields cutting cane for her whole life. You stand here and you think about what a harsh and inhumane existence it must have been. And the reason they were here was because they were born black.
We are remarkable people. I mean, we are people who placed in one of the most evil and barbaric societies. Our people held on to their intrinsic humanity. We are going to make a success of the Republic of Barbados. Reparations or no reparations. But we know what is due to us. We know what was taken from us.